and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings and welcome back. According to my guest, a shadow of war looms over the Caribbean. The recent unilateral threat by the United States government under the Donald Trump administration to deploy military ships and soldiers off the coast of Venezuela represents a dangerous and unacceptable escalation. And to that point, President Trump claimed yesterday that U.S. troops deployed to the Caribbean attacked and destroyed a, quote, drug ship, end quote, that had left Venezuela. How'd they know it was a drug ship if they did not board and inspect the vessel? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the show. You know, we have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum. And my guests and I discuss and analyze these events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. Let's quickly examine a couple of today's headlines. Trump says he's done a lot for Israel, including bombing Iran. The president also noted that Israel's lobby's strong influence on Congress and said it has waned in recent years. He said no one has done more for the state of Israel than himself and cited his recent airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities as an example. Yeah, folks, he is delusional, but he will tell you what's going on in his mind. Also, again, Trump suggests he could back European troops in Ukraine with air power as part of a security guarantee. Russia has made it clear it would never accept a Western troop deployment to Ukraine. Trump suggested in an interview yesterday that he would be willing to back a European troop deployment in Ukraine as part of a security guarantee for a potential future peace deal, an arrangement Russia has made clear it won't ever accept. Folks, this is why Trump can't get a peace agreement. Putin fell for the lie with Minsk I, he fell for the lie with Minsk II, and has decided he's not going to fall for a lie the third time. On today's episode, the issue before us is the Trump administration and its false war on drugs. What's really behind this? My guest is an Argentine Venezuelan and was one of President Hugo Chavez's foreign policy advisors. She's worked with the Venezuelan government for more than 15 years and is currently based in Sao Paulo. And she's the author of the op-ed, Trump and Its False War on Drugs. Micaela Ovelar, welcome back.
Hello, Wilmer. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
You write in your piece, this move that's sending the warships off the coast, disguised as a supposed fight against drug trafficking, is nothing more than a new chapter of imperialist aggression against a sovereign country that has refused to submit to the dictates of the United States. Please elaborate on that for us, if you will.
Yeah, we need to be clear again in this. It's not the first time that the U.S. administration is trying to illegally overthrow the President Maduro. They did it before with Chavez and now they're trying to make it using this false flag of drugs, of fighting against narco traffic and drugs war. And we know this is just an excuse. And why don't you? I mean, the Trump administration, do they saying that they're trying to create yesterday with this bombing this ship in the Caribbean Ocean, in the Caribbean zone, sea? Why they don't do that inside the United States? Why don't they use and they don't mobilize all these military forces and warships in the coast of I don't know, Florida, or Miami, or or even Mexico, and it is because they are worried about the role that Venezuela has for the global South. So we know this. We have seen this. You as U.S. Citizens, as you know, the history of the United States more than me, and you have seen this all along the history of the country. And I think Trump is trying to. I think first Trump is buying the storytelling and the lies that Marco Rubio is selling him in order to hurt Venezuela government, right? See, so that's what we see. We see it clearly. We don't buy it. We don't buy the excuses, especially when you wouldn't show any proof. Like what happened yesterday. What happened with the bodies of the people that were supposed in this ship? What happened with the drugs? Do we have proofs? We don't have it. And the President Maduro even mentioned that he asked to Gemini, and Gemini says it's a video made by using artificial intelligence. So where are the proofs? What happened with the people? Why no one is talking about that? They won't do that because they don't care. They just want to use any kind of excuse to try to create an atmosphere where even the invasion of Venezuela is possible.
And to that point, President Maduro had a press conference yesterday, and we have about a minute or so clip from the press conference. It is in Spanish, and so we'll play it, and then I'll ask you to translate when it's done. Roll the clip, please.
La unidad comunal miliciana de combate en los 5.336 circuitos comunales del país. Y esa unidad comunal miliciana englobará una estructura llamada Base Popular de Defensa Integral, que son 15.751 bases populares de defensa integral. Y eso va a reorganizar de manera dinámica a los 8.200.000 ciudadanos y ciudadanas de Venezuela que están alistados en el sistema miliciano y de reservistas. Y las URRA están desplegadas en este momento que estamos hablando nosotros aquí en 164 lugares del país combatiendo. No solo patrullando, combatiendo. 164 puntos del país. O sea, nuestra Fuerza Armada está desplegada, entrenada, equipada, desplegada y combatiendo.
I know at one point of the press conference, he talked about the Venezuelan militia. Tell us, translate for us what the message was at the press conference.
Well, since the initial threat was made public, U.S. threat against Venezuela was made public, President Maduro gave a call to the Venezuelan people to enlist into the militia. So President Maduro called to men, women, and young Venezuelans to join a popular military and police force, militia, right? So he was saying that the militia is composed by 8 million over a population of 3 million of Venezuelan. 8,200,000 Venezuelan are already part of the popular military and police militia. And there, the enlistment, the call for to enlist in this militia will go on. You have like 2 important dates, but after that, President Maduro decided that you could enlist in another. Well, it's going to be permanent, so it's going to be like open for more Venezuelan to be able to defend our territory. So he also was saying that there are almost 200 active point where the militias are already, especially with the military forces, are already active. They are defending a strategic point of the territory of Venezuela. So he was calling to the Venezuelan again to keep showing this militia, but also he was showing a domestic force, how the government and the people of Venezuela are preparing to defend our country from any enemy, but not in this case is Venezuela. But it's not only Venezuela. I also mentioned it in my article that the President Trump put $50 million for the head, for the capture. He said capture, but you can just think in an operation without thinking that Maduro could lose his life. So he's calling for he's given that the government of the United States is given a reward for the head, for the capture, for the assassination of a president constitutionally elect, and well, so the message is for the people who like sicarios or paramilitary groups that are willing to join this adventure in order to get the reward or other rewards, political rewards or political quotes. So, well, the government it's aware, it's alarmed, and it's watching what is going on, and it's putting the intelligent body all over the country in order to stop this new tentative of withdrawal and interference in the national matters of Venezuelans.
Where are people such as Juan Guaido and Marina Machado, two opposition operatives? We won't even call them leaders. Folks remember, of course, that the United States tried to impose Juan Guaido onto the Venezuelan people as their president, even though Nicolas Maduro is the democratically elected head of state in Venezuela. And then the leader of the opposition party, Marina Machado. Where are they in the midst of all of this?
Well, first, Juan Guaido, he left the country. He ran away as a fugitive, and he's protected by the U.S. government in the U.S. And in the case of Maria Corina, well, she has become a leader and a supporter and a foster of the terrorists and the criminal islands. He has linked with, of course, with the U.S. government, with Trump administration, but not only with the Republican administration, with the Democratic administration, because he belongs to the oligarchy. So since always she has this contact with the power of economic power and political power in the state. But now she has this role where she is the leader of an alliance of many sectors and actors that include narco traffic, which the government of the United States it's pretending to make us believe that it's the reason why he has this military power and warships in front of Venezuela. So Maria Corina is trying by all means she's able to do it, and she can, and she's a powerful woman to promote terrorist attack and criminal attacks against the country, against the Venezuela, and not only against Maduro. This is the role that she's playing.
The $50 million bounty that is been put by Donald Trump on the head of President Maduro is what was actually first initiated by former President Biden. I think it was 25 million that Biden put out there. Now Trump has doubled down. I make that point to so people can clearly understand that this is not just Donald Trump. This is American policy in the region. This is American policy towards Venezuela. With that having been said, I know that President Maduro and the Venezuelan government have been able to establish much better relationships with Iran and with China and with Russia as well. Do you see the Venezuelan relationships with these countries factoring into this in any way, shape, or form?
Yes. Well, you mean if the relationship that Venezuela has with those countries, it's making worse the situation?
Do you think that the United States is factoring those relationships into its decisions to either take action, to pretend as though it's taking action? Do you think that Marco Rubio and others are keeping that in the back of their mind?
Yeah, I think that the United States is United States as an imperialist country is not happy to see the rising of China or to see the rising of other multilateral countries as that, you know, that the multilateralism as an option, and countries that support this multilateralism as Russia, as China, as in South America, Brazil or Venezuela especially, right? So yes, I think he's trying to the government of Trump is trying to, or the Trump administration is trying to cut this link with Venezuela and Russia, and also I think this is the thing. The thing is that the United States wanted it to keep being the hegemonic power. So, or which is different, whatever is different to that, they see it as a national enemy. Their intention of keep being the hegemonic power forever, right? Which is impossible. And we are seeing the rising of China at this moment. So I think yes, I think that could be part of the analyst.
A lot of people looking at what's going on turn their focus to oil. We know that there are reports that there could very well be more oil off the coast of Venezuela than there is in Saudi Arabia. We know the relationships that ExxonMobil has been trying to engage in. But as you mentioned in your piece, and you said a little earlier, there's a lot more to this than just access to oil.
Yeah, there are two motivations that the Trump administration has to mobilize this warship in the Caribbean. First is what you mentioned, oil. Uh, for example, Chevron, it's is trying to build good relations with Venezuela, but so you have others in the oil business, other actors that also wanted to have a good relationship with Venezuela. Uh, but the other motivation, and sometimes is more important, is the economic motivation, the political motivation. It's not just the fact of the oil. We have this role. Venezuela has this role of hope for many other countries that wanted to be independent, that wanted to be sovereign, um, and they see that Venezuela is showing that they can do it because of Venezuelan resistance. Because we have already 25 years resisting. Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, we are proof that you can be independent. Of course, you're going to suffering this arrangement for the hegemonic powers, but we have we not only have the we have shown that it's possible. We also have the right to be independent,
Mm-hmm.
as a country, and to manage our principal enterprise or industry, which is oil, but also to do and to have other type of relationship that doesn't put the United States, the you the you yeah the United States as the principal actor in our political, in our economic, in our cultural exchange with the rest of the world. We are part of ALBA, we are part of CELAC, we wanted to be part of BRICS, and we wanted to have bilateral relationship with China, with Russia, with Turkey, and why we can do that? Just because the United States doesn't want it. So we have the right to be independent, uh, and to live in a multipolar world,
Mm-hmm.
in a community, in a different community, not in an only vision of the whole world as U.S. imperialism is trying to impose.
The Kashiba writes, pay attention also in what is going on in South Africa. Check out Abigail Lucy Mary's latest message on her channel. Israel wants the Western Cape in South Africa. They are buying land, blacks out. Micaela, you're in Sao Paulo. We know that there is a trial going on with the former president, Jair Bolsonaro, is on trial for trying to fix the election, and that the United States has been trying to weigh in on that election. On that trial. Give us a quick update as to what's happening right now in Brazil with the trial of former President Bolsonaro.
Okay, yesterday the trial against Bolsonaro and other people from his cabinet started in Brazil. This is a historical, and there are a few charges that he is blamed of committed during his government and after. First is he was part of this organization to try to give a coup d'état against Lula. But there are also things like what happened the January 8th. January 8th, there was also a historical, but in a negative, also in a negative way, where the Bolsonaristas break into the three power of this nation, and we're trying to give another coup d'état. So the whole country is living this as a historical moment.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Bolsonaristas, they wanted to try to win the case, right? It's almost impossible. I would say it's like 90 against out of 10, the possibility of Bolsonaro to win the case.
Okay.
Are very low. So the country is like shaped by this historical case, judgment, or trial, and again, the Trump administration is not using the drugs now. He's using the excuse of the tariff, the word, the tariff word,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like threatening the government of Lula that he's going to increase the tariff. Already are high.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to increase this tariff, and he's trying to. Well, he also Marco Rubio now with the government with the Bolsonaro son that is called Eduardo. He's actually in the state, and with Marco Rubio, they are trying. They have the same role that Maria Corina, right?
Okay.
They kind of, they are actually the trading to their own country because they are allying with a foreign country in order to hurt their own country. In the case of Brazil, Eduardo Bolsonaro and Marco Rubio are, planning to attack the judicial power with Moraes, with the judge that is in charge of this case.
And as I understand it, as we wrap this up, as I understand it, even the judge or some of the judges have come out very clearly and said to the United States, do not think that you can come in and interfere in our election. So you've got the United States putting a bounty of $50 million on the head of President Nicolas Maduro, and in Venezuela, you have the United States trying to interfere in the constitutional judiciary process in Brazil. Micaela, they've got their hands in everything. Micaela Ovelar, thank you so much for your time, so much for your analysis. Your piece.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Your piece is entitled "Trump and Its False War on Drugs," and it's at Harici.com. 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 HARICI, and it's entitled "Trump and Its False War on Drugs." It's a phenomenal piece. Greatly appreciate it. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, that's Micaela Ovelar, and great journalist, and she knows her politics, no question, in that region. Now, let's turn our attention to the next issue and our next guest. The Washington Post reports, this is their headline: China's Xi, flanked by Putin and Kim, shows off, quote, new generation, end quote, weapons, as Xi Jinping declared China as a nation, quote, never intimidated by bullies, end quote. President Trump urged him to acknowledge the United States' support in winning World War II. What is with all of this hyperbole, and why does someone being pro-them have to contribute to the narrative of being anti-U.S. U.S. For insight into this, let's turn to my next guest. He's a teacher, an analyst, an activist, a commentator, KJ No. As always, KJ, welcome back.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
I had a chance yesterday to watch a good bit of that military parade. My goodness. I saw what we would, I guess, call AWACS planes. I saw what we would call B-1 stealth bombers. I saw air refueling of what we would consider to be F-16 or F-35. Man, they've got some firepower.
Yes, definitely. They were definitely showing some of their firepower. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Yes. They also demonstrated they pulled out their drones, including underwater drones. They also put out, drone weapons that attack drones. And then, the whole 9 yards, as well as, the kind of incredible close drills. So just showing that they are prepared and ready for war. But I'll point out perhaps a couple of things that most people might have missed. The first thing is the incredible joviality and bonhomie between the leaders, Modi, Xi, and President Putin. Just how easy that chemistry was, in contrast to the stiff and awkward, dressing down that you see when the European leaders and Trump get together. It's completely different. So you can see, what the relationships are like. But I think another thing to note is, at the end of that long and impressive parade, they let out doves. Mm-hmm. And this is really their way of saying, we can defend ourselves if necessary. But what we really want is peace. We're looking for peace. And that long stretch of road that they walked down, the troops went down by, that is called the Chang'anjie. That's the long peace road. They understand peace is a long road, but they're willing to march down it. And the plaza in which they congregated, is the plaza of is the gate of heavenly peace. So everywhere, there are suggestions and references to peace. The Chinese want peace. They don't want to go to war with the United States, and they're trying to make that as clear as possible. They're sending the message, we can defend ourselves, but above all, please let us not go to war. And this celebration, which is a celebration of the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Japan, from where the Chinese stand. The United States is the successor colonial power to Japan. It's essentially Japan, which they fought for 15 years. It was a 15-year battle that they fought against Japan. And higher estimates say that 35 million Chinese died fighting the Japanese, and there were, brutal, horrific atrocities. Unit 731, the kind of Manchurian Passage, millions worked to death in Manchuria. And then, the comfort women, and then just the endless slaughter, the Nanjing massacre, 300,000, women, children, men raped, killed, slaughtered en masse. It's like it's very similar to what we're seeing in the current moment, but on just on a scale which is so much larger. And the Chinese are aware of that. They have experienced that, in their bones. There's still living people who remember, who lived through the Japanese colonization. And the Chinese message to the United States and to the EU is, let's find a way for us to find peace together. We fought the Japanese fascists before, And we also know that you have currently taken on the role of the Japanese fascists. You have taken over all the Japanese colonies. That's Taiwan Island, South Korea, Philippines, the Ryukyu Islands, otherwise known as Okinawa, as well as the small islands, Wake Island, Marshall Islands, etc. All of those Japanese islands that were used to attack China when Japan tried to destroy China over a 15-year period, the United States has placed itself in those exact same places and looks to be preparing a war against China, very similar to what the Japanese did in World War II. And the Chinese are saying, we remember our history. And this time round, we are not a broken and weak and divided country. We're a strong, powerful country with the capacity to defend ourselves. So I think that was the key message that was being sent.
One of the things that stood out to me with as much of the military hardware that was on display was, with all of that hardware, the Chinese economy is still growing, and growing at a fairly steady and strong clip compared to the United States. So while the United States is basically bankrupting itself in order to develop and manufacture these weapon systems, and it's, from what I understand, from a technological perspective, woefully behind China. China is way out front on this, and they haven't sacrificed the domestic economy in order to do so.
You're absolutely right. For them, it's people that matter. It is not about the military-industrial complex. In China, there is no such thing as the military-industrial complex. You have civilian companies that also make military products, but most of them are state-owned, or they are part of the general economy. And so you don't have a dedicated military-industrial complex that needs to go to war in order to raise shareholder prices. Again, no such thing, right? So that shows how you can structure, organize a society in a completely different way that serves people's needs rather than the needs of the oligarchs who are using war as a way of getting rich. I'm talking, there are many people I could name, but we know who we're talking about. The simple fact is, just looking at the raw numbers, China spends 4 times as much on education as it does on its military, which is exactly the inverse of the United States. The United States spends 4 times as much on its military as it does on education. In fact, the Chinese education budget equals the US military budget. So you can see where the priorities lie, and you can see what the results of that are. If you serve your people, if you fund the programs that are necessary for human development, then you're going to get a society that develops rapidly, that creates abundance and wealth and infrastructure for everybody. And on the other hand, if you have a system that is essentially a revolving door and a way to funnel money into plutocratic oligarchs who gain their profit from waging war, then you're going to have a completely different society. So I think that contrast is extraordinarily clear, and you can even see it in in the parade itself. The Chinese, when they march, and the people also who observe, you can see how deeply proud they are, not only of resisting fascism, resisting the Japanese, but also of their accomplishments as a nation. There's just one more point I will make, which is that if there in the stands, there were some very, very old veterans of the war. And if you look at their uniforms, there's something you should notice, or if you're looking for it, you'll notice it. And it's something which is missing. Those veterans, even though they're old and sometimes very, important leaders, their uniforms have no rank insignia. At best, they'll have a little red strap. That's all.
Mhm.
So they don't have any rank insignia because the Chinese military, which has been around, the People's Liberation Army has been around for 97 years. For about 49 of those 97 years, it had no ranks. It was a military with ranks. It literally was, essentially a people's army. People's army fights because it's willing to fight. And everybody knows, of course, you do have leaders. And of course, some people are more experienced than others. But people joined the battle and they fought against the fascists, not simply because their lives depended on it. And many times, their lives were lost, but because it was a people's army where people came together voluntarily to defend themselves against an imminent and unspeakable threat, which the Japanese were. And so I think that's also something to remember. Until 1998, approximately, the Chinese, the People's Liberation Army, didn't have ranks. That's how you fight wars. It's not like Ukraine, where every child and their dog is being conscripted and shanghaied and tossed into vans, and who knows what happens. But you have to win a war when people are motivated, and part of that motivation knows that they are building out an egalitarian society, a more equal society that starts with the military itself. So I think there's some important lessons there, but certainly all of that was glossed over in the Western press.
You're mentioning the People's Army makes me think about General Giap's book, People's Army, People's War, which I think folks would be well served to read that. Modi, I think, was conspicuously absent at the parade. And the reason I say conspicuously absent was because he was there the day before for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. So it seems as though he was the only one that, I don't know if he had to take his kid to soccer practice or he had to get his suits out of the cleaners before the cleaners closed, but he seemed to have gotten out of town pretty quick. Am I making more of that than there is?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it could be that he didn't want to, but I mean, the optics are already there, right? He has been there with President Putin and President Xi. They've been, essentially hanging out together. And you can see, as I said, the obvious good humor, the good relations.
And Erdogan as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I hate to sound like they attacked President Obama for wearing the tan suit, but he was out of sync with his light colored suit and everybody else. But anyway, I'm just making a point. He was there as well.
Yes, he was there as well, as were Viso and Vucic from Serbia and Slovakia. So it was a very, very impressive gathering of leaders, certainly sending the message that, we are many and we are also together. So I think there was a strong message being sent there. Modi, I think different people have different takes on it, but Modi looks to have been pushed into alliance with both Russia and China after the US spent over a decade trying to peel him off and to use him as a weapon against China. Remember, the US has this Indo-Pacific strategy, which is essentially a pivot to Asia, which is essentially a plan to start war with China and to destroy it. And India was supposed to be the left tackle. That's why they even gave it a specific name. Remember, we used to call it the Asia Pacific. And then all of a sudden it became the Indo-Pacific, because that's how much they wanted to emphasize India. And this notion of the Indo-Pacific is an old Bismarckian term, colonial term from the from the 1800s, really. But the US brought it back because that's how much they wanted India to be the left tackle in this pivot to Asia. It's going to be the left tackle, Japan on the right, Taiwan in the middle, and Korea, etc. So, I mean, it was very, very well set up. And then with Trump putting this extraordinary pressure on Modi, and Peter Navarro blaming Modi for the Ukraine war, he calls the Ukraine-Russia conflict, he calls it Modi's war, right? He blames it on Modi, and I think maybe that may have been a bridge too far. It was the last straw, and so I'm going to hang out with the people that you're accusing me of aiding. You've brought about the very result that you have been trying to prevent. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. But all of that said, Modi is a kind of a chameleon. He's an amphibious character. Just before he went to the SCO, he also dropped in on the Quad. That's Australia, Japan, US, and India. And so he certainly is trying to play both sides of the fence. But I think he's starting to see, where the real momentum is. And so he made a strong and conspicuous statement by showing up in Beijing and joining the SCO. And just a few words about the SCO. The SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. People confuse it with the BRI and the BRICS, and they get all these systems mixed up. But it is the oldest organization of the rising global South in the modern era. It was put together in, I think, 1996, which is to say that it was originally called the Shanghai Five, which was Russia and China, and then Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, and then later Uzbekistan. So it was, former Soviet states and Russia and China, and they were trying to build a bloc. It is very clearly a security bloc as opposed to BRICS, which is a trading consortium. It's an alliance of countries that trade with each other. But the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a very deliberate security bloc, and it is designed to prevent subversion by the imperial West. Its whole notion is to ensure security and sovereignty. And so you saw this in the agenda and in the statement that was generated. They're focusing on, first, territorial sovereignty, territorial integrity, geostrategic security. The second thing they're focusing on is digital security or digital sovereignty, because we know now that there's no way to have sovereignty, territorial sovereignty, without having digital sovereignty, because you will be taken down in an instant, because that's where the US has such an extraordinary asymmetrical, overwhelming power, is in the digital domain. They actually have a digital Wolfowitz doctrine, so they actually can control everything that happens, and by having digital sovereignty and sovereignty over AI and building out, the new internet IP6 plus, they're going to create a secure digital information system for the SEO. And the third thing, which is also related, is energy security. So this is the Power of Siberia 2 and all the other agreements that they have been working on that will create energy security for the SCO countries. And then also, they're talking about creating security in the domain of, for example, drug trafficking and transnational criminal networks, etc. So, but the emphasis is about security. And the last piece of the security foundation, which is tied to the other three, is financial security. So they want to create secure financial systems. So this is about creating the BRICS Bank, and then also the secure systems that will allow the kind of cross-border payment settlements, etc. So the emphasis is on security, and it's very, very concrete. Unlike the BRICS, it's not an amorphous, loosely allied organization. This is like bricks with muscle and nerves. That's what this is. And once again, having all of these parties present sent a very, very strong message that the multipolar world is not going anywhere. They're just building on strength upon strength, and they're building out not only infrastructure, but the real concrete structures that allow security, as well as building out, all the capacities of these countries to resist and to continue to develop. They want to build out global governance. They understand that the UN now is a highly compromised and flawed institution, but they don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. They know that there is enough good in its organic original structure that they can build on it. So they want to add to that. So now they have proposed a global governance initiative in addition to the three other initiatives: the global development initiative, global security initiative, and global civilizational initiative.
Final question for you, and that centers around what was the purpose behind all of this hyperbole about World War II, and the Washington Post and other Western outlets were describing this as China's trying to rewrite history as it relates to World War II. China is trying to write the United States out of history. All of this, what I really saw this as was more of a backdoor way of bringing the Taiwan issue back to the forefront. Your thoughts?
Well, I would say that they're not trying to rewrite history. They're simply trying to reinscribe the Chinese contribution into the annals of Western history, where it has largely been erased. I mean, the simple fact is that the Chinese did extraordinary things and made extraordinary sacrifices in order to prevent the world being colonized by the Japanese fascists. And if the Chinese had not tied down the Kwantung Army and the Japanese in Asia, in East Asia, World War II would have been completely different. And you and I would be saying, Ohayo gozaimasu, today, right? So I think that it's really important for people to understand it. The thing that has been erased is that World War II did not start in Europe, and it was not fought primarily by European powers. It started in China in 1931. That was when the Japanese invaded Manchuria and essentially turned it into the world's largest slave state.
But see, you've put your analysis in the context of China. When I was reading some of the Western descriptions, it was, this is a matter of the ROC versus the nationalists. The nationalists versus the communists. That President Xi is trying to promote the status of the role of the communists in China, when in fact the party hadn't been started till 1940. They were trying to make this more as an internal, which is why I saw it as trying to highlight what's happening in Taiwan from the Western perspective, as opposed to straightening out the record in terms of China's contribution to the war. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, it's a complete. I mean, the U.S. or the Washington Post or whatever Western viewpoint is, I think, highly debatable. The People's Liberation Army, which is really the Fourth Route Army and the Fourth Field Army and the Eighth Route Army, they started in the late 1920s, and they were fighting it was a civil war, so they were fighting the KMT. At a certain point, they came together and they fought Japanese together. And Chiang Kai-shek was actually held captive by his officers until he agreed to ally with the PLA to fight the Japanese. But even as he was doing that, he was constantly looking for ways to betray them and use the fighting or the war itself as a way to undermine them. So, for example, we know that a lot of the supplies that were being sent through Lend-Lease to Chiang Kai-shek, he was actually squirreling them away, not putting them into battle, because he was preparing those munitions and those supplies to fight the communists. So there was so much corruption that was going on. The KMT essentially was, modern parallels abound, right? But it was essentially the corrupt army that was fighting on behalf of the West. And the PLA, as I said, or really the 8th Route, 4th Route Army, were the ones who won, not by force of their arms, and not by force of their, military power, but by force of their moral example. As I said, go back and look at all the pictures of the troops. No rank insignia. They did not have ranks. They fought. The only ranks that you had was that the officers had 4 pockets because they had to put notebooks in the top 2 breast pockets, and the enlisted had 2 pockets, right? So they had less responsibility. But it was an army. It was an army built of equals that were fighting on the basis of their ethical principles. And it was those ethical principles that allowed them to win out over the KMT, the fascists, who were thoroughly corrupt through and through, from top to bottom. And so it really was, a war where, you see the sign that they were showing at the parade itself, but righteousness will win. That was one of the banners, but that was really how the PLA fought, and so all of that is to say that Taiwan became a base for the ROC. Simply, Taiwan, you have to think of Taiwan as a little bit like South Korea or South Vietnam. It was a kind of rump state that was artificially created by the United States so that they could continue to have a forward base against China. And just as they split Korea into 2, they split Vietnam into 2, they also split China into 2. I mean, it's just a tiny little fragment. They continued to wage war against China until the 70s from Taiwan Island. As I said before, Taiwan Island was stolen from China by the Japanese in 1894 as part of the first Sino-Japanese War. It was a kind of colonial war booty. And having been turned into a Japanese base, which they used to attack China, when the Japanese surrendered, the U.S. became the successor colonizer empire, and it took over Taiwan and used it as a base until the 70s. And then for the next few decades, it's also used it as a subcontractor to do dirty work, and also as a kind of a hedge against China. And then now that they've given up the pretense of trying to accommodate or engage with China, it's being turned back into a base, yet another U.S. military base, just following up on its tradition of being a Japanese military base. So that's how the Chinese see it.
KJ, no, as always, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate that analysis. And as always, my brother, look forward to having you back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Take care. All right, folks. Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. Thanks for listening to the podcast, Connecting the Dots with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. New episode tomorrow. Robert Fantina is going to join us tomorrow. Also, folks, please follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. All the links are below. And remember that this is where history, politics, and culture converge because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.